Okay, hello everyone. We're just giving it a moment for all of the participants to join us and get out of the hole in the wait room. So I'll do that. And then we will get started shortly. I hope that all of you are doing well this evening in this rainy day, at least rainy where I am in Brooklyn, and a little chilly. Okay. Well, the numbers are still going up, so I'm going to just wait and let people come on in. All right, everyone, we're going to get started shortly. We're just waiting for people to jump on into the Zoom room. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So, welcome to 30 Days of MBBA. And we're going to be talking with Breon S, who is our Metropolitan Black Bar Association Private Practitioner of the Year. We're so proud to have him today for this Fireside chat. As many of you know, we usually have a fabulous gala every year in which we're all able to convene and to really honor the honorees and just honor the essence of being Black attorneys together. And given the multiple pandemics of COVID-19, in which we're still experiencing, and obviously pandemic of racism, which we are deeply in as well, we are now across from you via Zoom. That being said, there is a benefit to be able to convene in this way, and it lasts a little bit longer, and we can go back and watch the clips. And so I want to introduce myself because that's important. I'm Paula Edgar. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a past president of the Metropolitan Black Bar Association, and I'm a current officer and deeply dedicated to Black lawyers, Black people, and diversity and inclusion generally. And the work that I do is as a consultant doing training, facilitation, and sitting on Zoom pretty much all day these days. We're going to show the clip that was produced, the 60-second version of the clip that was produced in honor of your being honored, Breon, first, and then we will come to you for some comments and then jump into the questions, all right? And yes, everyone, feel free to use the chat to send shout outs to reflect on what Breon's saying, give those virtual snaps. This is going to be a fun conversation. I'm very excited because Breon S is very much deserving of the Private Practitioner of the Year. So watch this video.
Why is the MBBA important to the legal profession?
I think organizations like the MBBA play a crucial role in making sure that the perspectives of Black people and issues that are important to them are focused on. And the MBBA allows us lawyers to come together, speak collectively as one voice, work together on issues that may be critical to the legal profession or beyond.
And one of the things that I love about Breon is Breon cares about the community. Breon is not only interested in his own accomplishments, and he has many, but Breon is also really concerned about making sure that there's a legacy and that other young attorneys of color and that other women are able to walk through the doors that he opened.
Okay, so that was the quick clip. There are longer ones. We'll be sharing those on social media, but I wanted to really take the opportunity to hear from you live and in Zoom person about who you are. But before we get to that, I know that you wanted to say a few words, and I'd love for you to do so now.
Yeah, Paul, I did, and you know, I just want to first express my gratitude to the Metropolitan Black Bar Association for this honor. It's truly humbling to be recognized by this important organization. And it's also special to be honored this year along with the other honorees. And in particular, I want to highlight Zach Carter, who was honored this year. And Zach hired me many years ago at the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Eastern District of New York. So I really appreciate that opportunity that Zach afforded to me. So I want to congratulate Zach and also the other honorees this year. And one thing, Paul, I can comfortably say is that, you know, I wouldn't be in a position to give any kind of honor without the many, many people who have helped me along the way during the course of my career. And I've benefited from amazing training and mentoring and guidance and support from many colleagues and friends and professors who saw something in me and invested in me and helped me succeed. I can't name everyone, of course, but I do want to express my appreciation. I want to thank my friends and family at Cleary, in particular, my current and former colleagues. It's an amazing firm. It's given me a great platform to do interesting work. I work with incredibly talented and bright, dedicated lawyers on a day-to-day, which makes my job easier, to be honest. And then the last, I want to talk about my family. Got to talk about my family. I come from a close-knit family of 5 people. I have 2 brothers and a sister, and my parents. And it's they have always been there for me, and say my parents in particular have always been wonderful and given me the love, support, and encouragement to pursue whatever goals I set. They've always been behind me and really instilled in me the values that I hold dearly and aspire to uphold in life. And then I have a wonderful wife and 2 kids that I like to brag about because, they've been amazing. They bring me so much joy and love. And, there's a lot of long work nights, long business trips, and they've always been incredibly understanding and supportive. My kids, they make me proud. They keep me laughing, and they also keep me sharp. Neither of them, my son or my daughter, want to be lawyers, unfortunately, but they advocate like lawyers. They debate with the rest of them, so they keep me sharp even when I'm not at work. And then my wife is also a lawyer, and I'll have to confess, despite me getting this honor, she's still viewed as the lawyer of the family. And people laugh when I say that, but I have proof, right? So several years ago, my mother called me, and you all know, those of us who are lawyers know that as soon as you have a lawyer in the family, your family members get litigious, right? They have a dispute and they're ready to sue people. So my mom calls me, she has a dispute at this retail store, and she was right. And she said, so I think I'm gonna have to sue them. And so I'm waiting, thinking, okay, she's gonna ask me, okay, so how do we do this? And she said, okay, I just wanted to fill you in, but put Jackie on the phone. That's my wife. So, that keeps me humble as well. Knowing that
Indeed, if your own mother's.
Yeah. Although she's consulted me since on other disputes. But in all seriousness, my wife has been such a wonderful partner and counselor for me and cheerleader. And I just say, without all the people in my life who supported me, I wouldn't be receiving this award. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that at the top. So I want to thank everybody.
Of course, absolutely. And thank you for prioritizing that, because I do think that it is important to know that we can't do anything without our support systems, whether they are professional, personal, or at the intersection. So we've already started.
Thank you, Paula, for taking time.
Oh,
to interview me. I appreciate
Breon,
that.
come on. So we've already started sort of getting into the nature of this conversation is for us to learn about you, but to really learn about the 360 you and some of your perceptions, et cetera. And so I wanted to start with some quick questions to just get the right or wrong answer to which ones it's going to be. So coffee or tea?
I'm a coffee drinker.
Okay. Michael Jackson or Prince?
No question, Prince.
Okay.
I'll say this question has been the subject of much debate at our Black Affinity Group events. So I know people feel strongly, but the right answer is Prince.
Good, as long as we're aligned. Excellent. What is your favorite book?
I have a bunch of books I enjoy, but I would mention The Color Purple by Alice Walker is an amazing book. And I do want to mention another book that I've read more recently, which is Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. I highly recommend that book. Brian is the executive director of the Equal Justice Initiative in Alabama. And I also had the privilege of taking one of his classes when I was at NYU Law, and he's amazing. So that's a good book. I highly recommend it.
Yes, I co-sign both of them, and especially now. So,
Yes, yes,
yeah,
very kind.
yeah. So back in the day when we could vacation places safely, what was your favorite place to vacation?
So I'm a big beach vacation person. And right now I'd love to be anywhere in the Caribbean, to be quite honest with you, with COVID
Mhm.
times. But I would have to say if it's a favorite place, I would have to say Martha's Vineyard. And it's a
Mhm.
place that I go to every year with my family, my friends and their children go.
Yeah.
And so we get together. It's great beaches and seafood, but it's really family and friends time.
Yes.
I really do cherish those opportunities and memories.
Fantastic. So now that we've got a little, loosening questions, let's jump into the, I think, crux of this, which is I want you to tell me about your legal career. So wherever you want to start to now, tell us about what you've done.
Yeah, so it's a lot. I've been blessed, I must say, and had the opportunity to do a lot of different things, interesting things, challenging things, things that have been a lot of fun to me during the course of my career. So I'm trying to sort of run through them because they were all, in some respects, meaningful. I do want to start though, actually, before law school,
Sure.
because in thinking about preparing me for my legal career, I do want to mention that I was. Um, in a program called Sponsors for Educational Opportunity, the SEO program, the summer before I went to law school. And that was a program that placed students from underrepresented groups in Wall Street firms. And for me, I spent the summer at a major Wall Street firm. It's an eye-opening experience, to say the least. Coming from college and coming from, I grew up, born in Philadelphia, grew up in Jersey and in Brooklyn. You know, stepping foot into a Wall Street firm was a different experience for me. And SEO was amazing because obviously I got exposure to the work. And they also spent a lot of time giving me access to training and tips on how to be successful as a law student, but also in the legal career. I think that laid a great foundation for me in starting law school. I went to NYU Law, which was a great law school. Took some great courses with great professors. And after that, I joined Cleary Gottlieb, which where I am now. So sort of the bookends for me.
Yeah.
And I was an associate at Cleary Gottlieb in a litigation group. And as a young associate at the firm, worked on a variety of litigation matters, all kinds of disputes, and really sort of developed my legal skills. And I took a minute, I guess it was a year, to go clerk. And I clerked for the Honorable Sterling Johnson Jr. in the Eastern District of New York, who, if anybody knows Judge
Awesome.
Johnson, knows he's an
Awesome.
amazing person. And that was a great experience for me. So I always encourage young lawyers who are thinking about clerking to really consider it, because for me, it was an interesting opportunity to work at the elbow of Judge Johnson, who's so experienced and so wise and so giving of himself to help me learn and develop. So that was great. Then, just on the pure legal perspective, I worked on very interesting issues, researching, writing opinions, et cetera, which was great. And then the other thing, which I think is undervalued aspect, I got to watch a lot. So I got to see a lot of lawyers come into court. And I got to say, Paula, it was eye-opening.
I bet.
Some were fantastic,
Yeah.
some left a little to be desired. But for me, it was great because you see what works, what doesn't work in front of a judge, in front of a jury. And those are experiences that I can then incorporate into my career, my approach to matters. So that was great. Came back to Cleary after my clerkship, continued on my path. And as I said, Cleary was the great foundation for me. But then I sort of gave into my desire to work in the public sector. When I was in law school, one of the things that I aspired to do was to be a public defender, in particular, work on criminal defense side for juveniles. I mean, that was my interest. I'm a defense lawyer now, but at that point in time, I was thinking about doing it, and I decided to jump into the public sector. And I had this conversation with Judge Johnson, an example of the impact he had. And he said to me, "Did you ever think about becoming a prosecutor?" And I said, "No, aren't prosecutors bad?" That kind of that kind of reaction.
Yeah.
And he really convinced me that applying to U.S. Attorney's Office was a good thing. And he said to me, Breon, you have to understand that prosecutors have most of the power in the criminal justice system. And in order for the criminal justice system to work properly and fairly, you need good lawyers on both sides of the aisle. So while you can be a good defense attorney, you also need prosecutors who are going to be fair and ethical and do justice. He said, so consider that. And I
Such
did.
an important lesson, especially these days.
It's incredibly important. And so, when I look back at that, I applied to U.S. Attorney's Office, as I mentioned. Zach gave me an opportunity. And those years at the U.S. Attorney's Office were phenomenal in many respects. One, it's just as a litigator, right? Investigating cases, bringing cases, trying cases in front of juries. I love that. Arguing at the Second Circuit on criminal matters was an amazing experience. But for me, and I did all kinds of cases, fraud cases, violent crime, etc. But for me, the understanding that what I was doing was, I hoped, having a positive impact on the community and a positive impact on all the players in the system, not just the victims, right? Not just the community members, but also the defendant's family. All of those people are part of the community that I believed I was serving. It was really great. And I did it in Brooklyn, the Eastern District of New York. So I was home and I felt like what I was doing was having an impact. So did that. That's what I'm saying. I've done a bunch of things. So I was at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and then I got recruited by my alma mater, NYU Law, to come back and teach. And so I went back and taught a prosecution clinic, which was a fun year because it was an opportunity for me to help train future prosecutors and help train them in the way that I thought was the right way to approach the role. We talked about unconscious bias. We talked about disparities in sentencing and in the criminal justice system in all different phases. So I felt like that was a good way of giving back to people who hopefully will step into the roles and do it the right way. And then after that, I realized I missed practicing law. I like dealing with difficult problems for my clients. I like advocating in court or in front of authorities to try to get the best result for my client. And I miss that. And I miss working collectively with my colleagues because, as a professor, you're often in your office by yourself, writing articles and researching, which is all important, but I miss the interaction. So I decided to get back in the private sector and come back to Cleary. As you see, I chose Cleary 3 times. I mean,
I was going to say, you keep choosing. Yes, it's awesome.
As a lawyer. And so at Cleary, my practice has been varied, and it's been really interesting. I mean, I mainly focus on white collar criminal defense and investigations, handling, criminal and regulatory matters for major corporations and financial institutions around the world. A lot of my clients are multinational corporations as well, and also represent individuals, business executives in those cases. Do internal investigations for clients. Whistleblower comes up and says something's going wrong. The clients will ask us to come in and not only investigate, tell them what happened, but also help them figure out how to deal with it, how to address it. And that could be, dealing with a criminal investigation, that could be dealing with civil litigation that results, or it could just be remediation, changing policies and procedures, improving your compliance programs. So do all that. I'm in front of all the different enforcers in the U.S., DOJ, U.S. Attorney's Office, SEC, banking regulators, you name it. We handle those matters, and it's a range of issues: complex frauds, corruption, insider trading, money laundering, you name it. I feel bad sometimes talking about it because I say to my clients all the time, it's like, okay, you probably never want to see me again, but I will not take it personally because I understand usually I'm coming in to deal with something that may be messy and pose significant risk to the client. And one of the things I'll say, Paula, has been actually a really interesting development in my career over the past several years is it's become much more global. And I've seen, as the world kind of shrinks a little bit in terms of business activity, in terms of connectivity across the globe, increasingly you're seeing clients who are not only dealing with risk with U.S. authorities or in the U.S., but also authorities in other countries. So we're often helping clients navigate multiple legal regimes, dealing with laws and expectations, and that's been pretty interesting and challenging. So I've traveled the world, doing investigations.
I can imagine it being interesting, especially because we're having to have that intersection of skill set, right? And the skill, the knowledge of having to, kind of know the players and having been in front of different places, and then being able to support while they don't necessarily may not want to see you again, while they do see you, to feel supported, right? And I know just, that's a special intersection that you sit in, and it really speaks to why you're selected as our private practitioner of the year in a very deep way.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Paula. And it's true. It's like one of the things I tell young lawyers all the time. I enjoy dealing with high stakes matters, tough issues, and trying to help the client figure it out, right? And it's humbling, really, when a client turns to you and says, "I got this major problem and risk, and I want you to help me solve it. I want you to help me figure it out." I take that very seriously, and I'm going to put in the time and energy and work to figure out the best solution. Their problem becomes my problem for that period of time. And I'm not just thinking about the legal risk, right? I'm thinking about helping them resolve the legal risk, but I'm also thinking about the business risk, that reputational risk. I want this to be a holistic, beneficial outcome for the clients. And that's how I approach these kinds of problems. And my colleagues are saying we have a great white collar group at the firm, and we all have the same approach. And one of the things about the global matters is you get to collaborate, right, across office. We're a global firm, so I get to work with my colleagues in other parts of the world on these matters, and I think it's been quite enjoyable. So I had to tell you, when I say I travel all over the world, I go to some great places, and then you go to some places that raise an eyebrow. So I recently did an investigation for a major steel company focused on alleged corrupt activity in Kazakhstan, right? So, and people are aware of Kazakhstan now because of that Borat movie, and people think of Borat. I've been to Kazakhstan. I've actually done an investigation in Kazakhstan, and I've done a lot of work in Brazil, as well, for clients in Europe and the Middle East. So it's been quite an interesting ride. And then when I'm not doing enforcement work, I also, handle complex commercial disputes for clients as well, just in court litigation as well. So it's quite an interesting and fun practice.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating, especially thinking about the cross-cultural piece of this when you're working internationally and having to navigate and show influence and impact for your client in all of those different aspects. It sounds fascinating. It's one of the reasons that when I do chats like this, I really want to be surprised. Like, tell me all of the things, because a bio doesn't give you this context, right? And when I think about how clients have to select, of course, there's a lot of word of mouth, but there's also the hearing. It's clear that you're passionate about what you do, and that that passion is an important piece of the value proposition. So, thank you. What else? Anything else you want to add to that before I jump into my next question?
No. I think, like I said, I've been appreciative of the opportunities I've had, and appreciative that clients have called on me to help them, and hopefully that will continue. I'm looking forward to the next, several years of my career, see what it holds.
So are we. So everyone who's online, if you'd like to ask a question in the chat, you're welcome to do so. I'm going to wait to ask questions from you at the end, but you can ask them anytime if you want to follow up on something and not forget. So my next question for you is, what has been the highlight of your legal career?
That's hard. It's hard to choose a highlight. I've had many great experiences, during my career as a prosecutor and at Cleary. And frankly, I just get a lot of satisfaction on a day-to-day basis working on my matters with my colleagues and my clients. But I do want to mention a couple things.
Please.
That stick out just for me. One was I was honored to be appointed as a special master by Judge Garifas in the Vulcan Society versus City of New York case, and that was, as you probably know, Paul, it was a significant case in which Judge Garifas found that the city had discriminated against Black and Latinx applicants in the connection with the exam that everyone has to take in order to qualify to be a firefighter. So it was a significant matter. He got a lot of attention, a lot of criticism, frankly, in the media, but it was a major case, and he asked me to serve as a special master, help administer the claims to figure out what relief each person who fell in the class of people who had been discriminated against would get. And I was truly honored by that. I had appeared before Judge Garifas as an assistant U.S. attorney. So he remembered me from that experience, and he thought of me to step in and handle this role. So that's something that stands out to me. It was a significant case, and I was honored that the judge thought of me to do that. The second thing I want to talk about is one of my pro bono cases. I maintain an active pro bono caseload. It's important, I think, for lawyers to give back to the community. And I have a particular interest in criminal cases and immigration cases, constitutional, civil rights cases. But I want to talk about one of my cases, which was a representation that we did at Cleary, and I led for my client, Clifford Jones. And Cliff was wrongfully convicted of murder, rape, and robbery in Manhattan in 1981. And it's an interesting case because when you read the file, you always say, how did this happen? So, he didn't match the description of the perpetrator as described by the witnesses. The rape victim, who was really the lone witness, was high on heroin when she picked him out of the lineup. But irrespective of all that, and there was no DNA evidence or anything like that at the time, irrespective of all that, he was convicted and lost all his appeals. And he's, one like many other people around the country who continue to proclaim their innocence and ask for help. And one of our associates brought the case to me and said, can we take this on? And we took it on in 2008. Now, by 2008, he had already spent almost 30 years in prison. So, it's one of these cases where you're like, I'm not sure we're going to be able to help, but let's try. We discovered some hair evidence in the file that hadn't been tested. And this hair was in the hat that was worn by the person who committed the crimes. And, back in 1981, they couldn't really do the work that they can do now with respect to DNA analysis. So we got that hair and we got it tested, and it didn't match my client, Cliff, which was great. And there was also DNA evidence that was taken from under the fingernails of the murder victim, because he had a struggle with the person who stabbed him to death. That DNA evidence didn't match Cliff. So we thought, this is easy, but we literally had to fight over the course of 8 years before we were able to get justice for Cliff. And this was a fight that took us all the way up to the New York Court of Appeals, the highest state court in New York. And it led to them overturning decades-old precedent that limited their ability to review cases like Cliff's. Wow. And they sent it back down to the trial court, and ultimately the Manhattan DA's office agreed with us that he should be exonerated, and he's innocent. So he's out. The beautiful thing about it, Paula, is a couple of things. He's out. He's enjoying his life. He is pursuing college degrees. He's with his family. But I'll never forget when he and I spoke, and he said, he's not bitter. And he said, Breon, I really just wanted to be able to get out of prison while my mom was still alive, because several of his family members had passed over the course of that 28 or so years. And so you realize that there are a lot of things that we complain about and aren't happy about, but there are people who have much greater burdens, and you have to appreciate some of the simpler things in life. So that was an amazing experience, and that's part of what I vowed to do as a law student. I want to use my legal degree and skills to try to help people, and so that's an example. I think that was a highlight of my career.
Well, clearly, you have been impactful. And, oftentimes when people look at corporate lawyers, they're like, corporate lawyer, right? They're not thinking about the multiple ways in which you can continue to have civic engagement and work on things that impact our communities as well. And so, I mean, just thinking about the two things you just said, I'm like, that you're at the crux of essentially how we see systemic racism play out in within the systems in this country. And I'm going to skip for a moment in terms of the order of questions, because I think that those two examples beg the question, because as I'm hearing what you're saying, I keep thinking to myself, this is why it's important to have a Black lawyer. Right, this is important. Right, that the push might not have been as hard if there was not an understanding of context and systems, as well as the need for justice. And so, my question for you is, why, in your opinion, do Black lawyers matter?
So many reasons. I mean, I always tell people, it's like when you think about Black lawyers have a lot to offer. Right, we're smart, we're talented, we're creative, we're driven. I can go on and on, but you hit the nail on the head, all of that. We add value by bringing different life experiences and perspectives to bear. And I've had a number of conversations with managing partner in my firm, because we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion a lot at Cleary. It's something we're focused on and been focused on for a long time. And we talked about how the incorporation of experiences and perspectives of Black lawyers really leads to, in my view, and he shares this view, better legal service, higher level, higher quality legal service and advice for clients. And that can be for a pro bono client, that can be for, private side client. And the same can be said about women and other diverse lawyers as well. And it may be just like a certain, like you said, a tenacity in pursuing something. It can be a different perspective or a different way to tackle a problem or look at a problem. It can be a novel approach to an issue, or just questions. We might raise some questions that add value. And I think what's important for institutions to recognize is that value is there, and we have to find ways to access it, to foster it, and to respect it, and really incorporate it in all of our offerings. And part of the way to do that, obviously, is to make sure that we cultivate an inclusive environment, inclusive culture, where Black lawyers like us can say, we feel comfortable kind of jumping in, taking a risk, weighing in, adding that value. So there's so many ways that I think Black lawyers can contribute, and I think it's important. And I'm starting to see law firms and clients beginning to appreciate that value, and starting to say, we want to see that diversity on our teams, because I think they recognize that there's a contribution that leads to better service. So hopefully those kinds of developments will lead to real change and even greater opportunities for Black lawyers and other diverse lawyers going forward.
Agreed, 100%. In the work that I do, and I work with a lot of law firms, it is, how do we set and understand the commitment, understand how bias is in our systems, and put systems in place to mitigate those biases so that we can get to the best result and have people actually feel included, even when there is not representation above them, right? So at the associate level, even if there's not any Black partners, clearly you're sitting here in front of me as a Black partner, so that is wonderful. But it's important for folks to reflect on that, and that Black lawyers do add not just representation, but also this value proposition that is so deep and strong and consistent. Hearing what you're saying, that tenacity piece that you just mentioned, It's a place when I say I love Black lawyers, and everybody who knows me knows that I do, it's that. It's like, to be able to see some of the systems of the way that we're navigating it. We're not just the lawyer, but we're also a part of the community. It's an important perspective. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so my next question is, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you were a young attorney or a young law student?
A lot of things. I think.
Everything, right?
Yeah, I wish I had known a lot of things. But I guess one of the things I'll focus on is I wish I would have understood back when I was in law school and a young lawyer the importance of networking and developing relationships with other students and with other lawyers. I knew that, but it's easy, especially as a Black lawyer, Black student, or diverse lawyers, to kind of put your head down, say, I'm just going to do my work. I don't want to make mistakes. I don't want to be noticed, because you worry that being noticed is actually being noticed for a negative, not a positive. And you can often say, I'm just going to interact with people I'm comfortable with, right? It's safer to do that. And what I would say, and I try to advise students and young lawyers all the time, is try to step out of your comfort zone, take risks, and look to grow relationships with people who may be like you, of course. MBBA, obviously, organization of Black lawyers, of course, but also people who don't look like you. People who are different than you. And you never know, the people you meet and develop relationships with along the way can be incredibly instrumental in your career development, and frankly can be value add to your life, even outside of your profession. And I say that from experience, because there are several people who really influenced my career, who are dear friends of mine now, who are very different from me, have a different background, not Black, and have different life experiences, but we've connected. And it's been an amazing relationship. And there's so many people who I could say that about. So I want to encourage younger lawyers to, try to develop those relationships, look to grow your connections, because that can really influence your career. And I will also say, though, it's important for it to be a two-way street, though. So I encourage, other senior lawyers who are not Black, or not diverse, to invest in cultivating those relationships as well. It's much harder for the young lawyer or student to do it than it is for the more senior person to say, hey, I want to get to know you, I want to help you, I want to mentor you, et cetera. So I think it's a two-way street, but I do want young lawyers to understand, like, it's important, so it's worth investing in your career in that way.
That's an important lesson. When I do facilitate trainings on professional development, networking, and branding, and I always say your network is your net worth, right? Like I'm 2 steps away from what I need always. And that's an important piece of this. And that's been something that I've built through being, thoughtful and responsive, and also, not just what I can get, but also what I can give. And I've seen so many people become successful just with that perspective. How can I add value to this person who I want to engage with as a mentor or a sponsor? And then to your point about people who are gun shy about mentoring because they think so much about the difference. Doing the work of diversity and inclusion is like, I find so many more similarities.
Exactly.
Once you get below, some of the things that we see, we're very similar. Very, very
We
similar.
have to be open.
Certainly. Okay, so I'm going to jump to some other questions here. If you were not working as an attorney, you would be working as a blank.
I would say a teacher. And the reason I say that is it's probably, and I mean, be even more specific, it's probably high school, because at some point,
Mr. Carter,
younger kids can be a little more challenging.
Yeah.
But probably high school. And the reason I think that, Paula, is because, like I mentioned before, I'm interested in young people and developing young people. And that's part of the work I did in law school and try to do on the pro bono side. But I also like educating and presenting information to people. Like I always say, one of the things I enjoy most about um, my my job is sort of the challenge of finding a way to present information in an interesting and accessible and compelling way to different audiences, right? And that's one of the things I loved about being a prosecutor, right? You have a jury composed of people from different walks of life, different races, nationalities, perspectives, and I have to figure out how to present a case and present information to them that they would understand, so they'd be engaged, and see the case the way I was presenting it. So I think of the classroom in some ways posing similar challenges, right? You have students at different levels and different backgrounds and different experiences. And I enjoy the challenge of trying to help all of them kind of learn and process the information in advance. And then to the extent you can provide advice and support and encouragement along the way, so that students, particularly students of color, feel that they can be successful, they can overcome obstacles and shine. I would love to be part of that process. And so I think if I was a teacher, then I'd probably also be a basketball coach as well. I'm a huge basketball fan. I played basketball growing up. So I think that's another way to help, transfer information and knowledge and life lessons to students through sports.
Absolutely. I mean, Cleary can put together a basketball team after COVID's over.
We have a basketball. Cleary's a basketball team. I retired a long time ago, though.
Well, that is awesome. Of course, doing the work that you did at NYU, you got some of the teaching in, but just for a different cohort. And I'm sure that, again, what you're doing now is continuing to teach people. And I'm seeing a line through your responses in terms of pipeline and commitment, and how the importance of literally having you in the space that you are is affecting other people's perspective about who they can be, and literally who they can be, because you're either releasing them from their, being imprisoned wrongly, or giving them access. There's so many things in here, and the fact that you were SEO alum too, right? This is why we have to connect where we are representation wise to where the pipeline is, and support. Yeah, if not us, then who, is what I say pretty much every day.
Right.
Okay, name one person, not me, who has inspired you throughout your career. And you've named several.
You took away my answer. All right. No, a lot. There's been so many people that have inspired me throughout my career. People I know personally, but also people I've just admired from afar. But if I'm going to focus on one person, I mentioned him before, but I want to amplify Sterling Johnson, who, as I mentioned, I clerked for. I first met him when I was a 1L at law school, and I was a judicial intern in his chambers, and then he gave me the opportunity to serve as his law clerk after law school, and he helped train me, substantively as a lawyer, but helped prepare me to be a professional and to be, frankly, a good person, sort of like my parents did. He's, very influential. And part of the reason that, I focus on and been so inspired by him is because, I really admire what he accomplished during the course of his career. And I recognize that he came along at a time many decades ago where there weren't opportunities at Wall Street firms, right, to walk out of law school or walk out of U.S. Attorney's office and go into a Wall Street firm. He didn't have that opportunity. I did, and many of us do. So you realize how time has changed and how people like Sterling Johnson have paved the way for us to achieve many things now. And the other thing I focus on with him, there's so many, but you have to model. He models the behavior.
Yeah.
As a lawyer or a judge, but also as a Black man, that I've always admired and respect. He's a family man. He's a man of faith, and a man of integrity and incredibly wise and insightful. And so he, in working with him, he instilled in me some important values, which I try to follow. I mean, just a couple of things that I always think about when I think about Judge Johnson is, you got to do what you think is right, and just despite the risk that people will disagree or criticize. And he always would tell the story. I'm not worried about getting reversed by the Second Circuit because they get reversed by the Supreme Court. So who knows who's right? So I like laugh. So he said he's going to do what he thinks is right and have the courage of his conviction. So that's one thing that I always remember from him. The other, and this is something that frankly my parents instilled in me as well, is treat everyone with respect, no matter what their station is in life. Judge Johnson was a person that everybody in the courthouse would come see him, and didn't have to be a lawyer, didn't have to be another judge. And he, was open to trying to talk to and help anybody. And then the last thing is kind of being generous with your time and not forgetting to help anyone that comes after you, right? So, paying it forward. And I've tried to mimic that in terms of trying to help lawyers, Black lawyers, but women lawyers, other diverse lawyers, all lawyers, develop and be the best lawyers they can be and provide whatever support I can. I'm not shy about that. And it's something that's been incredibly important to me. And seeing Ayanna on that first clip, Ayanna is amazing, lawyer, is doing great things, but she was an associate at the firm. And I spent a lot of time working with her, mentoring her, and she's blossomed and incredible. So that gives me great joy to see, the people who I've worked with, incredibly talented Black lawyers, and come to Cleary, get a great experience, and then go off and do wonderful things. And to be able to say that I had some impact on them really is gratifying. And so, following Judge Johnson, I want to continue to do those things. It's one of those things you always hear people say, I stand on the shoulders of giants, right? And I definitely stand on the shoulder of many giants, but Sterling Johnson is definitely one of the highlights.
He's fantastic. He's fantastic. It's so heartwarming to hear, because again, I'm seeing the mentoring and pipeline and how that impact, if not for having had the opportunity to be tutored by him in terms of, the skill and the essence in which you do the things that you do, it does impact who you become. And we see that over and over again from people who have been mentored and sponsored well. So there's some questions. I know that we have only about 12 minutes. So there's some questions that have come in from the chat, and I'm going to go to those, and then I'm intersperse some of mine in closeout time. So I encourage all of you to share whatever other questions or comments that you have at this time. And I'll start with, why did you decide to clerk after a year of working for a firm, and how was your experience with the process?
So I decided to clerk. Well, I'll go back. It's interesting because in law school, oftentimes, particularly as Black lawyers, you don't even think you can clerk. Like, it's not even something that you think about. I was fortunate enough. My wife clerked, before me, and she had focused on the process. So I realized it was something that I wanted to pursue. Spoke to a bunch of professors, and they said, you should give it a shot. And I had that experience working as an intern in Judge Johnson's chambers. So I knew kind of generally what the job was, and I knew it would be a very beneficial professional experience. So I decided to go for it. And my mentality, and I try to convey this to a lot of young lawyers as well, is, you got to be in the game to win the game. So I always say, okay, if it's something you want to pursue, try, apply. Worst case scenario, you don't get it. But then you're in the same place you would be if you never applied. And so I did that. And in terms of the process, I thought a lot about, where I wanted to be, what type of judge, I'd want to clerk for and tried to be thoughtful and
Strategic, it sounds like too.
Yeah, a little bit. Although I applied to a lot of judges. So.
That was the strategy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, you're basically, calling back to Brooklyn, closed mouths don't get fed, right? Like if you have to go for what you want, and it leaves you in the same space if you don't get it. But there's so much opportunity in just the ask and just asking and trying. Okay, so considering the retention issue that many law firms face when it comes to retaining Black lawyers beyond the junior associate level, what are some things, traits, skills, etc., that you have observed over the years that have allowed some Black lawyers to stay and continue to climb the rank to partnership as you have done?
It's a good question. It's a lot.
Mm-hmm, it is.
I mentioned a lot of Black lawyers matter. I mentioned a lot of the things that I see on a day-to-day basis from the Black lawyers at my firm. I think a couple things that I would highlight. One is, you want people who are going to invest in their careers, and that includes being professional, working hard, having a strong work ethic, and being engaged. And when I say engaged, I mean, being willing to take risk and offer your perspectives and views to contribute to the representation or the solving of the problem. And I think lawyers who really get engaged often have an opportunity to excel in these environments because the talent is there. So it's just kind of letting it come out, being willing to take risks. And the reason I say take risks, I had a conversation with a Cleary alum, Black alum, a couple of weeks ago. We were just talking. He's in another job now, but he was just talking about some of his goals and aspirations. And I said to him, hey, step out there, be willing to speak up, speak out, connect with people, because you should have confidence in yourself that you have a lot to contribute. And once people see it, it's no denying it, right? And so I encourage that. So I think those are a few things. Obviously, people will have to show the skill and commitment and have to endure, obviously, hard work and
all of that.
Long nights, like I said. But I think those are some of the traits. Now, I will say, again, it's a two-way street, right? So I can give Black lawyers a lot of tips on ways in which I think they can be successful. But I also think it's important for law firms and institutions to think about ways we need to evolve in order to allow our Black lawyers to shine and be successful, right? So to me, I look at it as a two-way street. So there are a lot of things I could say, you do these 10 things and it'll be great, but we also need that other side where partners at law firms and others in law firms are saying, okay, I'm going to change maybe the way I approach dealing with diverse lawyers. I'm going to mentor that person, sponsor that person. I'm going to give them that opportunity in that high profile case or deal. Mm-hmm. And when you have that, and those of us who have succeeded, none of us have done it alone, right? And that's across the board. That's white lawyers and Black lawyers. Like whenever anybody tells a story about how they became a partner, rarely do you hear a story that doesn't have X, Y, or Z person or partner helped me, took me under their wing and brought me along. We need more people to take the Black lawyers under their wing and invest in their development and success. And I think if we do that, I think you'll see much more diversity in law firm ranks and partnership ranks.
Agreed. That and accountability. Those are my favorite things.
Yes, absolutely.
How did you find the transition from being a prosecutor to private practice? Any obstacles? And what career advice would you give to a prosecutor who doesn't want to do criminal defense?
So I'll be, yes, there were differences. One of the things about being a prosecutor, and every prosecutor will know, is it's your show in a sense that you do the investigation, you do the case, you try the case. It's really your thing. You have autonomy. So transitioning back into private practice, if you go to a firm, often there are layers of people. There's a hierarchy. So some of that autonomy goes away sometimes. The other thing that goes away is the power dynamic. So as a prosecutor, you have the power, right? So when you call somebody, they call you right back. When you go to private practice, you call somebody, they might not call you back.
Right.
You don't have that power anymore. Those are things that are differences, but I think fundamentally there's so many similarities because, again, as a prosecutor, you're dealing with difficult issues, right? And as a private side lawyer, defense lawyer, you're doing the same. And at firms like mine, they're very complex problems, which makes it really interesting. The other question was for a prosecutor who doesn't want to be a defense attorney. I mean, you don't have to leave prosecution. There are a lot of people who to do that for a career. And so that's important, but there's also a whole host of jobs and opportunities out there for people who have the skills that prosecutors have, whether it be going in-house, a corporation, teaching, and the like. So.
Agree with you 100%. That's one of the roles that you get a like foot to the fire learning pretty quickly. And
Yes.
and that's a good preparation for any trajectory within the law or not often. So whoever that is.
Trial, I'd been at the U.S. Attorney's Office for 5 weeks.
I thought you were going to say 5 minutes.
5 weeks. And Judge and Margot Bird, who's now a judge, we were in the U.S. Attorney's Office together. Yeah,
yes.
Margot was great.
Yeah.
She gave me a trial. She was like, "You want this trial?" Because she had 2, and she was like, "I can't do them both." And I said, "Okay." It was a little nerve-wracking, but it was a great experience. So you're right. Like you get thrown in, and you have that confidence that you can execute with the support of obviously your colleagues.
Yeah. Speaking of bravery and taking a risk, gee, I got nervous, and it wasn't even me. So as we close out, I have a couple of questions. If you could have dinner with anyone, who would it be and why?
That's right. Now I have to talk sports.
Okay, ready.
I haven't really talked sports. So I'm a huge basketball fan. So I think right now I would choose LeBron James.
Mm-hmm.
They just won the championship. He's a great player. So it'd be interesting to sit across the table and talk to him, talk basketball with him, and talk about kind of his career, how he keeps mentally sharp and on top of his game after doing it so long. There's probably some things I can learn from that. And then the other thing that would be interesting for me is I've watched him be outspoken on social issues. And there's always a question of whether it's a risk for someone who has something to lose to speak out on social issues. And I've been impressed that he has done that on important issues. And I would love to kind of talk to him about that thinking, that thought process, and how he got comfortable with that. And then the last thing I would do, I can't have a dinner with LeBron James without pitching Cleary Gottlieb services. There's got to be a project that we can help him with. So I would definitely come prepared to talk about how great our firm is and what we could do for him.
As well as you always should. So LeBron, when you hear this, now you know.
Exactly.
I actually see a lot of similarities. You probably have a lot to talk about. He's also dedicated to education, right? And impact in terms of social justice. So you're absolutely right. I think that would be a great dinner right before he hires you.
Yeah, exactly. That's in there.
Okay, so as we close, we've got 2 minutes left. What is the best piece of advice you've received in your career?
So a lot of great advice. The one thing I'll say, and I try to pass this on, is your reputation is incredibly important. Build it up, but then protect it. I learned somebody told me that a long time ago, and I'm glad they did because it helps me think about how to approach my career, my interactions with clients, with colleagues, with adversaries. And you realize your reputation often precedes you. The legal community is pretty small in New York and outside of New York.
Yeah.
And I've been in many, many situations where you're having a conversation and someone asks me what I think of someone else that I've met or worked with. Mm-hmm. And what we all would like for people when they're asked about us is to say good things,
yeah.
Right? And so I always think about that and say, think about your reputation. you know, work hard, you're professional, you're zealous in advocacy, and I'm a zealous advocate on behalf of my clients. But you do it with integrity, you do it ethically, you treat people like you'd want to be treated. And so I try to always keep those things in my mind, and then you hope that to the extent people speak about you, they're going to say positive things. Now you can't control that, of course, but so I would say, your reputation is important, and treasure it and protect it, because if you lose credibility, you lose respect. It's hard to recover.
I think that was a wonderful way to close, particularly the protected part. I will say that your reputation seems pretty solid to me. You have brought me peace, Breon, during this conversation. I really enjoyed it. On behalf of the Metropolitan Black Bar Association, our officers and our board, as well as our members and everyone who's on this webinar and who will see it in the future, thank you for your service, thank you for your impact, and thank you for your continued care of being a Black lawyer and supporting other Black lawyers. Breon, have a wonderful evening, everyone. Goodbye. Wear a mask, wash your hands, and we'll see you together at the gala, hopefully when we're able to be in the same room together again. All right.
Thank you, Paula. And thanks to the Metropolitan Black Bar Association. Really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.